of the Fijian Drua in full voice in the dressing room. Picked up though, Yosefu Masi! He is in for the Drua's first try. Wide ball, Tamani, Smoke and Joe! Oh yeah! The wide ball, Salawa. He's got a Rugby cell with him! Wow! It's like the Sevens tournament, isn't it? Flags are up in Lautoka. What a game. Time to celebrate. It's only week 3, but this is very special.
Lako mai. Come. Wait, did that just happen? You bet it did. Well done, Fijian Drua and Vinaka. Yes!
Tēnā koutou katoa, Bula Vinaka. Good evening, welcome into the breakdown. It is great to have you joining us, and how good was that? The sights, the sounds, the excitement, the tears afterwards from the Fijian Drua. It is exactly what this competition needed in round 3. We're going to celebrate with that team. We're going to talk about the All Blacks rest week, this mounting injury list, and whether or not we should be worried ahead of the Rugby World Cup. And Joe Schmidt officially pulls out of the All Blacks coaching race for 2024 and beyond. Joining us are the usual suspects. Great to have you back from the golf. Jeff Wilson, Sir John Kerwin, Mills Muliaina as well. I know you're ready to get stuck in.
Yeah, I just love this new desk.
Yes.
Because bottom line, I'm now head-to-head with Sir John Kerwin, because it was always a bit difficult when he was sitting right beside me, but now we'll go at plenty
Hope
tonight.
you go better head to me with me than you did in your golf, mate.
This is why you two are sitting about 5 metres apart. But let's talk about this Fijian Drua, right? It's hard enough to beat the Crusaders when you've been in this Super Rugby competition for 26 years. The Drua do it in year 2, JK.
And that's why we brought them in. So good for the community. Fiji is a really, really hard place to play, right? You get the selection right with the Fijian Drua side. They've got talent right across the park. Crusaders gave them a gift, possibly by leaving a lot of their All Blacks out, and they paid the price. But what an absolute joy to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to you about it earlier in the week, didn't I? That you go over there and you get caught up in the hype and, you know, the crowd, and they're getting behind it. You try to play their sort of style of game. No one can play that game as well as what they can do. But, I mean, just the colour and everything that sort of came away from that, and obviously the result, you know, that's a big scalp to be able to pick up. And they've got another 6 home games to go, so we're in for a big year.
I enjoyed one of it in particular, JK, and you spotted it coming in.
Yeah.
There's one lone tree on that bank, and whether or not the tree was bought in...
Take a look at this.
Well, that's
God celebrating. Look at that.
That's rocking.
And he's a Blues supporter.
Oh, what?
But the crowd, I mean, when you looked at it, and I saw some photos today of one kid sitting on the ground looking under the banner, and he's got his brother on his shoulders who's looking over the fence, and just the joy and the dancing, and that's how sport should be. They just enjoy every minute of it. Be some kava drunk, Mills?
Just a little bit. Oh, okay.
2 wins, 1 loss to start the season as well. They've got a better record than the 6-time defending champion Crusaders. Let's talk about Super Rugby, all thanks to Nurofen, available at Chemist Warehouse. Well, you've got to give it up to the Fijian Drua. They won that game fair and square, but many people are now on notice saying you cannot rest players against this team, especially if you're going over to the Pacific Islands. So who got it wrong? The All Blacks rest policy, or did the Crusaders' management of their players? Was that where it was wrong?
Well, what was proven on the weekend is pure and simply, if you take an inexperienced side to Fiji to play against the Drua, who are clearly talented, who understand their conditions, who have a passionate home ground advantage, you can fall over. And the Crusaders got it wrong for me. The fact they left so many quality players, they took for granted that this was an opportunity where these young men could go there and play. Now, it was a remarkable comeback, if you think about it, from the Crusaders. They got themselves in front, but in the end, they made the errors, they gave away a penalty which cost them the result, and that could hurt them deeper in this competition. I think the Crusaders got this one wrong. And there's another part to me with this as well, is the fact that if you're talking about trying to promote the game, and trying to grow the game, and we want to see the best players playing, For the Crusaders to not have All Blacks over there playing disappointed me. I'm thinking...
Disagree, mate.
Oh, you might disagree.
Ask any Fijian in the crowd whether they gave a toss.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, you
would.
don't think they wanted to see Richie Mo'unga playing out there? You don't think they wanted to see the best players playing against their side? I think the winning of the game for the Fijian Republic would have outweighed Richie Mo'unga being out. If you think about Razor getting his selection wrong, yeah, he got it wrong. He trusted the depth of his squad, and it didn't pay off. You go to Fiji, a lot of the errors come from the heat, Mills. You know, the heat, not being ready for it. You need to
not
experience
being used
that
to it.
then.
Yeah, totally.
And how many times have the Crusaders played up there, Mills? They've played plenty of games in Super Rugby. Plenty of those guys knew what to expect to put young men in that situation. This is, and I'm not saying that they would have guaranteed a win if they'd taken them up there. Would have given them a better chance of having success. Now, losing David Havili early, that's certainly... But I'm also critical of the Highlanders. The fact when they went to the Super Round, they decided not to take their All Blacks. You're trying to create something special where the best players aren't there. And my next question, I've got to ask you this. If you're talking about rest in week 2 or week 3 for All Blacks who came back into the environment late, this is not rest anymore. This is strategic planning about how to make sure you don't have to rest anyone later on. And I think the Chiefs are the team that got it right. They've played all their All Blacks, and guess what? They're 3-0. They're on top of their game.
Mate, you don't win round 3, though. So it's a strategy.
You win home field advantage.
It's a strategy, though, and it's a strategy. I think it'll be good for the Crusaders, because what have they got? What's their motivation? I mean, they're going for 7 in a row. You know, they've traditionally started poorly. I think it was a strategic mistake, and they'll go, OK, now we're under the pump, and that's when they're most dangerous. Of course. Chiefs, if they go late, deep, and they're tired, who knows?
Of course it's a strategic mistake, because when are you going to get these guys out there? I mean, you look at the next couple of games that the Crusaders got. They got the Blues, and then they got they got the Brumbies. They're a very tough game. So at what stage do you go? Okay, well actually, yeah, they respected them. The downside is they didn't have the experiences like you're talking about. They respect them to go over there, and you've got to give a little bit of confidence to your young guys coming through to say you go out and win it. And where I look there is probably a little bit to the future in terms of where they're going to get to. They put guys out there. They got themselves back in the game. Clearly could have won it, and Razor would have been sitting here thinking, well, we would have, but unfortunately that's just the way sort of the cookie crumbles. But in terms of where Fiji draw have come, this is huge. They won't care whether Mo'unga's out there. Scott Barrett was out there, so was Whitelock.
No shortage of All Black. More than the Highlanders roll out every single week in that Crusaders team.
Absolutely. So I think in terms of the whole, I mean, we've sat here all the time and said how close this competition is getting, right? You know, and so this is part and parcel of what's sort of going to happen. Strategy is going to be a big thing. You're absolutely right, because why have rest on week 3? Why not just bring All Blacks back on week 3? You know what I mean? As opposed to week 1 and 2.
I don't understand it. You know, I don't get it when you're trying to prepare and go forward, and you think the Chiefs have now won 3 from 3. They've got 3 bonus points. All the momentum is in their favour, and we'll get to them a little bit later. But their depth in their key positions, in their All Black positions, is really, really strong.
I've got a question around the All Blacks rest policy. So just to confirm, every 5 weeks, these All Blacks players need to be rested at some stage, and it's up to the Super Rugby teams to decide when. But do we need this All Blacks rest?
Isn't it?
They can play 5 games in a row.
No, you're not allowed to play in 5 in a row. So you've got to play 4.
And you can't have a week off. Then you get a week off.
Yeah. But a complete week off.
Is this going to win us a World Cup? This All Blacks rest policy right now?
I think
it's going to win the World Cup.
I think we've all bought into this. The first time it happened, it fell over. But apparently, all the stats, all the brainy people, they say that if we get to the end of the year and we haven't rested properly, so be it. So everyone's bought into it. All the players agree with it.
I don't think this is going to cost us the Rugby World Cup in any way, shape or form. You know, they've done the science and behind it, but what I'm looking at the timing and going, you know what, I think if you're going to need a rest, and they're probably going to need another one at the back end of it at some point. But one thing you don't know is when players are going to get banged up, and when they actually are genuinely going to need a rest anyway, is the fact they've put everything on the line. And if you look at some of the games, you'll go, actually, you know what? They are going to struggle at some point when you get to the back of this competition. You had to rest them anyway.
Do we count Sam Cane as a full game? Because he's been yellow carded a couple of times, so that's 70 minutes. How do we count that?
I'll tell you what, he's doing his work in 70, enough for 80, so it doesn't really matter. And guess what? The Chiefs are still winning.
That's right, they are, aren't they, Mills? Well, let's talk about this mounting injury toll from Super Rugby. There were another couple of important injuries for the All Blacks picked up over the weekend. We saw David Havili go off, of course. Patrick Tuipulotu limped off. Tupou Va'i. They add to this mounting injury list, which right now includes Angus Ta'avao, Ufa Tuangafasi, Josh Lord, who we're hearing is about to return, Akira Ioane with an MCL injury, TJ Bernat on the sideline, Anton Leonard-Brown, Quinn Tupaia, Will Jordan and Mark Talia. Who is the most concerning, JK, for you out of that injury list?
Absolutely no one, Kirsty,
They're irreplaceable.
after week 2. If you're going to get injured now. Because we're even for the World Cup.
The only one's probably at the moment, we haven't seen Will Jordan. That's probably the only one at the moment. I look at, and he is a difference maker for the All Blacks. He has a try-scoring machine, and when he is on and playing well, he's probably the one I look at and go, he gives you versatility at wing, fullback. I think a lot of the injuries that we're aware of, they're recoverable. TJ Bernat is making remarkable recovery through his Achilles injury. Josh Lord, I saw him warming up down in Hamilton before the Chiefs game, so he's not too far away. But Mills, I look at this group and, we seem to have enough depth in those key positions.
I would say the midfield is actually starting to look a little bit thin. You got Good Hugh as well that you haven't sort of mentioned there. Havili, Anton's there. I mean, the experience, really is a big gap between there. So
Anton's 3 weeks away.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the trouble I'm not more concerned about is the repetitive injuries. So Anton hasn't put a season together for a couple of years and we've missed him. Havili now injured. He got a bit injured last year. Goodhue struggled to come back from injury. That's my concern. It's those guys that are coming back and then getting injured. Because for me, and I've always said that, Mills, and you played there, 12 and 13 for me are fundamental in having, we talk about it every time, it was Ma'a and Conrad, and you go overseas and you're picking, Guscott and Carling, all those guys. We need a combination at 12 and 13. We need them to play as much as possible.
The Tuipulotu injury for the Blues is concerning.
Yeah.
They've got very little depth at lock.
We're going to talk about the Blues a little bit later on, but this competition is so tight at the moment.
And that's when we lost Patrick Tuipulotu on the weekend, and Sandari's out for an undisclosed amount of time.
Yeah.
A lot of depth has been pulled out of their side, so all of a sudden that hurts them because it's critical at scrum time, lock time. That's going to hurt.
Fact of the matter is, though, after 3 rounds, there are only 2 unbeaten teams in this competition, the Brumbies and the Chiefs. So, Mills, what sets these 2 teams apart? Is it depth, coaching, management? What is it?
I think depth's the big one. When you talk about strategy, I think, the Chiefs have really looked at this. Every team looks at it. All the coaches look at sort of how they number. Of course, you got the Crusaders first and foremost. Then you get consistency by going over to Melbourne and playing, Moana Pacifica team that similar to the thinking that Razor sort of had going to Fiji. But you come back and you've got a massive game ahead of you, in terms of the Highlanders, because the Kiwi teams always bang each other up. So I think a little bit of that, the depth. The Brumbies have got a lot of that. In week 2. When you get Lolo Seal and White come on, very late to close the game with our international players. So, and I think also, the balance of that experience within, your front row, right through your whole sort of team. There's always sort of one in those positions that are carrying them through that have been there for a number of years. So I think a bit of that, a bit of depth and a little bit of strategy along the same time.
And those experienced players aren't necessarily All Blacks, are they? So they don't have to sit out the rest weeks.
No, there's things like, and the next level of talent and layer of talent they have, JK, is you've got a Josh Ioane who's sitting on the bench who can step up when Damian McKenzie needs a break. You've got Cortez Ratama when Brad Weber has to take a week off, who can step up and clearly talented, and Luke Jacobson can fill in a position. They've got Peter Gus Sawakula, who I don't think he'll be on rest week, so I don't know whether he needs that or not, but he can then step into the starting lineup. He was coming off the bench on the weekend, and they've got locks. They've got plenty of them. Lachlan Fennell as well.
Well, they've got plenty of everywhere.
But in positions that are All Blacks.
What we've got to be careful of, I reckon, Mills, is exactly what happened to Peter Gus Sawakula last year. Because he wasn't an All Black, he played everything. Yeah. And by the time he played for the All Blacks, he actually fell off a wee bit towards the end, and it cost him his All Black jersey. So those guys we've got to be careful of. Getting back to the Brumbies just have a game plan in their DNA. So that's how they play. They're really solid on it. Anyone who comes into that organisation, they know they play with that structure, and they're really hard to break down. But I think if we get back to the selection thing, we're going to have to be careful if someone is not an All Black and they don't get breaks, and then they make the All Blacks.
Absolutely, because they would have earned the opportunity. But the hardest thing will be, and we know that they've used so many players over the last couple of years, and that's through necessity. Obviously, COVID presented a completely different challenge for them. They're pretty aware of all the players and what they're at. There's probably only, I would say, Mills, probably a half a dozen max players out there who could do enough in this campaign to overtake an incumbent All Black. But you're 100% right on the Peter Gaussoa-Kula one. Last year, the minutes caught up with him. A couple of years ago, it caught up with the Kiri Ioane as well. Played every minute for the Blues, and he wasn't able to continue deep in the season.
So getting back, Kirsty, for me, it's 12 and 13 and 4 and 5 that I don't want to see any more injuries. Talking about the current form, all the All Blacks that are out, Super Rugby, I'd be really starting to protect Retallick, Whitelock.
I've got no issue at lock. I love what we've got sitting in behind there.
Really?
When Josh Lord, comes back, I thought, Patrick's a concern for me. Tupou Vai's another one. I know he was. Hopefully his injury isn't too serious.
Not enough test match under their belt.
Scott Barrett. Scott Barrett, Brodie Retallick and Sam Whitelock. You start with those.
Yeah, that's what I said.
There.
But But if those two got injured, that's what I worry about. I know there's someone coming through, but I'm talking about 5 minutes to go against France in a semi-final in Paris, and you've got to win the line-out. Do you want Whitelock and Retallick out there? So when we spoke about it before, it took me a while to think about it, because I was thinking about, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck at 12. He starts to come into contention now. Do we need to play him early if the other guys aren't coming back? I think he's had a really good start to the season. He's running some tough meters. Probably needs a little bit more consistency in the second half, Mills. I don't know if you noticed. I don't know why they're bringing him off, because I think his feet late would be good. But 12 and 13 and 4 and 5. So.
Let's talk about the locking stocks for the Blues, JK. We've gone 46 minutes on this program without barely mentioning your team, so we'll put you out of your misery. Patrick Tuipulotu looks like he's in doubt with that knee injury, and the line-out, let's be honest, fell to pieces a little bit in the second half without him there. So what do they actually do? Do they start to bring someone like a Tom Robinson into the mix? What do they do there, Mills?
Well, he's played there before. He's getting a good nick, I mean, at the moment he had a few injury issues as well the last couple of years. But when you're low in stock, there's lots of injuries. Of course, you go to someone like that. I mean, who else are you going to sort of bring in? You sort of shuffle around, that sort of back, the loosies.
Straight in there, mate. The big red, straight in there.
I don't think you've got any other options.
He's straight in there.
That's
no doubts. He's in there. You might shuffle the loose forwards a wee bit. Play Dalton at 6,
Choate comes
7.
on.
It's just going to be a massive challenge for the line-out. I think because you've got so much experience up front, and particularly in front row, I think your scrum's still going to be really solid. Soifoa's doing a great job there for me. He's converting into playing in the lock position, but that's going to test the Blues outfit. But I mean, that's the challenge of this competition. If we're in a professional competition, you'd be approaching one of the other teams if they had someone spare, and you'd be talking about loans, but that doesn't happen in Super Rugby just yet. Where there are other players who might not get on the field for other teams.
The biggest challenge is going to come this weekend for them as well. They're up against the Crusaders. We know what that means. Scott Barrett, Sam Whitelock.
Yeah, I don't know. They might be resting these two guys. They played
who knows?
Fiji. I don't know what's happening in that regard. Crusaders will be wounding. They'll be back to full strength. Look, I don't want to say it, JK, but I'm pretty confident that the Crusaders...
You're going to say that.
Well, I was always going to say that.
And Kirsty, how can you open by saying the Blues have got it hard this week? We're right.
Well, the line-out's going to be...
At line-out time.
The line-out
time. They're going to struggle, aren't they?
And you're relying heavily
Give little faith.
You
guys...
Tell us then, JK. Tell us why they won't.
I forgot.
I'm also a realist, and I look at what they'll be coming up against, and it's going to be a pretty loaded Crusaders team.
Lacking confidence.
Not the team
goes a long way, Mills. Confidence.
Not the team that stayed at home.
Plenty of fire there after that loss in Fiji.
Well, every week we get someone to pick their Form 15, their best 15 players across the round. This week we went to a Hurricanes hard man. He loves his code. We're talking about Bryce Casey from the Rock FM Breakfast. He's absolutely brilliant. And here is his team that he's picked. We'll take a look at his front row first and foremost. Ethan de Groot, Samasoni Taukei'aho and Tyrell Lomax round out as 1, 2 and 3. Scott Barrett, Brodie Retallick gets a mention yet again. He seems to be getting voted every week in the second row, and why would you not with him back in the competition? Tom Robinson, bit of love for the Blues. JK, Sam Cane at 7, Hugh Renton Potentially a surprise pick. He did that just for you, Jeff.
Great
He did that just for you. Got a Highlander in there, or two. 9-10. They come from the Chiefs. Brad Weber, Damian McKenzie have been absolutely brilliant in this competition. If we look at the midfield, Geordie Barrett, no surprises there. Alex Nankerville, once again from the Chiefs. And his back three. Who's he got? Big selections here. Caleb Clark, Julian Savia and Sean Stevenson. Many of these players getting voted every single week in this team. But instead of us picking it to pieces, let us first go to Bryce and he can explain exactly why he's chosen this team.
G'day there, Bryce from the Morning Rumble on the Rock. Thanks for having me. My pick for the Form 15, my easiest pick was at hooker. Big Samasoni is an absolute freak and I hope to see more of him this year. He'd make a great Hurricane. My number 8 from a losing team, he was inspirational. I thought Hugh Renton, ball in hand, he was great. And the tackle, yeah, everything. He was just a big old menace. 9 and 10 also, they would make great Hurricanes. Are from the Chiefs. Spud Webber, he's been great for ages. Brad Webber and McKenzie is my nod for first 5. Just that filthy lid alone, how high those sideburns are, does it for me. Before I go, Tummy Rumble in the Jungle. It's a kid's book. All money goes towards Gumboot Friday, which helps Kiwis that need it. You can text the word book to 3520. It's about 4 animals, self-love. They love doing farts. Buy it. Book 3520. Love you. Thanks. Bye.
He's an absolute legend, isn't he, Bryce Casey? Always doing great things in the mental health space.
Yeah, awesome, Bryce. Thanks, man. That's awesome. Great money going to Mike King, and Gumboot Friday puts it into some great stuff in mental health space. And cool, you've written a kids' book. That's fantastic. But what about your football team? Like,
what are you picking to pieces,
what happened
JK?
at 8? I mean, what happened at 8?
I reckon it's all right.
Like, did you not see Hoskins Satutu play on the weekend? Did no one see that?
I saw
Were you
Hugh
impressed
Renton.
by
I saw
Hugh
Hugh
Renton?
Renton
Yeah, on Friday?
all 80 minutes. I saw him every minute of the game. Not just every so often.
I get it.
Don't get me wrong. We know Hoskins' strengths, 100%. There's a reason why at this level, at Super Rugby level, he's so dangerous. And look, I can understand, why you'd be thinking, but I thought Hugh Renton he did put in a shift in a team that was battling away.
He was a standout, wasn't he?
Well, he was. I think he was.
I
like
the way he played in the weekend because you're right. They're a team that are struggling, and he showed him, and he showed a lot of grit. He was niggly. He got into the Chiefs as well. And he had a outstanding game, but there is some good loosies. I mean, Jacobson too comes into the picture, but I think, and also Hoskins, who you mentioned, JK. But I think it's a pretty handy selection there. Renton did play well.
Brad Weber at 9 keeps getting selected. Is he the number 1 halfback in New Zealand right now, JK?
It's close. I can't keep talking about the Blues, of course, but
Finlay's been great.
Yeah, Finlay's been outstanding. His defence is good. But I just love Brad as well. I think, one of the selections that I didn't quite understand last year was him not being a bigger part of the All Blacks. I just think he's got pace, around the base of the scrum. I think with these new rules, he can be really, really dangerous if someone launches him. The loosies are not going to get him. So I think the 2 informed halfbacks are those 2, and I think it's good. I think it's good for the All Blacks. I think it's good for the competition. And I like them. They're just your classic pain in the butt.
But how tough are they now, Mills? How tough are they? Physically, Aaron Smith, his first game back, ends up finishing the game at first 5'8" for the Highlanders. Let's not talk about that for them. But Christie, Weber, Whakatava, Rata, these guys are hard young men now who just put their bodies on the line and they lack for no physicality whatsoever. I think, in terms of competition, it's early days in terms of where Aaron Smith is at. But in terms of making statements, there's a number of players, constant selections. Webber, McKenzie, Stevenson are the 3 for me who continue to shine.
I've got a question for you, Mills. So in 3 months, Geordie Barrett's gone from fullback to now our number 12 All Black favourite off the Northern Tour. What are you seeing in this game?
Well, I'm seeing that physical sort of presence that he has. What aren't you seeing in his game? He's got a long kick. He's making really nice decisions. What you've got to remember also, he's been playing for the Hurricanes for the last couple of years at 12. He's only just shifted into the All Black sort of fold at the end of last year. But that consistency in Test match level is the next thing that he's getting to. But everything that we need in a second 5, Jeff. The fact that he gets the ball over the ball over the game line, his kicking game around the field, his organisation. But I've almost sort of seen a different side of him where he's actually not taking on so much responsibility like he used to for the Hurricanes because other guys are starting to step up around him.
Proctor's playing really well outside him. And I think what they've done, Brett Cameron coming in on the weekend, shows some really nice signs. I mean, they're doing it with some inexperience in some key positions now. Ardie Savea on the weekend. I don't think of him as an All Black fullback any longer. No. I think about him as an All Black 12. His skill set, what he's shown, he was probably, I believe, always destined to play that position. It just never worked out that way. He's ended up where he should be, and now it's a matter, the conversation should be about what are our options at fullback. And I don't want to shuffle the back around.
Is Sean Stevenson one? You mentioned Sean Stevenson. I think he's been in that team 3 weeks in a row, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's a fullback.
Does he come
like he's actually a fullback? He's not a converted player. He's not a first five. He's gone.
Irrelevant.
No, I think it's very relevant.
So relevant.
It's 100% relevant.
Loden Barrett will be fullback.
Yeah, and I get that. But when you're looking for the next guy, I don't want to move Geordie Barrett back there.
Nah.
You know, you're going, oh, if I want to make a shift, or Richie Mo'unga, you know, I touch wood, you know, gets injured. And all of a sudden you make the shift at first five. What's the option at fullback? McKenzie's clearly one of those. But I look at an out-and-out
Feta?
Steve, once again, I think he's a first five. Now, it just comes down to whether or not you can trust Sean Stevenson to make the best decisions under pressure when he has to come back at first receiver, because that's what the All Black fullback is expected to do. But I tell you what, if you can do it 3 weeks in a row, you're doing something right.
Well, that's his biggest challenge, and he knows that, isn't it? It's his consistency in the game. I mean, there's no doubt what he's sort of provided, you know, in the end of the year and then leading into the, you know, the Chiefs this year. And that probably will, you know, have a big... He continues the way he is. They'll have a big say in terms of that makeup on the bench that you're talking about, JK, whether, you know Roger gets that sort of place. You know, does McKenzie sit on the bench to come off as an impact player of 10 and have Bodie on at fullback and then having a Sean Stevenson that sort of, you know, wider? Or how does that makeup look like? Because at the moment, too, when I go back to my point about the midfielders, we are very, very shy at that. You know, if Geordie Barrett goes down, I'll be pretty worried.
And you were with me in Hamilton and watched Damian McKenzie in action, and there are some things the Chiefs are doing that are different to everybody else, particularly on attack.
Yeah, and I like this. Have a look at the way, look at Damian McKenzie. So they're folding around the same way. He's got Tokiaho there, and they almost feel like they're going back to the left-hand side. So what does the defence do? Look at them. They're all shifting because they're going back the other way. Bang. No way. And they've actually set that up really, really nicely because of the way their movement. And this is the stuff I like about the Chiefs. You know, what they're doing is actually moving guys around, but it almost seems like it's pre-planned.
Yeah, but what I like about excuse me, Kirsty, what was that?
Sorry, Brad said they were copying the North, right? 2 weeks ago.
Well,
Is that what you're saying there?
That's an Irish move if I've ever seen one, right? Set it up a couple of ways, swing back. But for me, I love McKenzie's style at 10 because I think he plays like a rugby league standoff. He's way more lateral. He's got guys coming off and got different options. And I reckon that is really difficult for the defensive system. And I like it. So if you were to say before, what's the bench? We missed Damian McKenzie last time in the All Blacks. He would be on the bench, and I would not be bringing Barrett the first five. I'd be putting him straight on and then showing a different attack.
The stuff he does when you're watching it live, you're going sideways, but he's actually literally running around 4 defenders. But he's got so much time on his hands. I don't get how someone doesn't panic when he's out there by himself like that.
But what you're starting to do is you start to follow him as another player, right? If you're a winger, if you're a fullback, you start following him because you're reading what he's reading. That's the connection that Atini Nana Saturo has met with. And we used to do this, right? And you talk about it, you used to get off... So you used to get off the shoulder of a player who could create. You understand? Andrew Mertens was no different. Carlos Spencer, you get where they're going to create. If you can see what they're seeing and you're moving... In the old days, what you used to do is you try and move players into spaces. Right now, you're actually moving bodies at the same time the ball's arriving. That's what attack teams are doing. They're moving the ball and you're going to where the space is. So you're making the defence chase you. That's different to what's been done in the last probably 5 or 6 years.
Well, I think that the Northern Hemisphere are leading the way, Mills.
Yep.
If you ever look at France, the way they attack, if you look at the way Ireland attack, and that's why I think our challenge is on attack for the All Blacks this year is we play a style with maybe Mo'unga there or Barrett there. But when Damian comes on, we should be able to go to another click-up, another different style of attacking, which I think is really, really exciting.
I would chase him, Damian McKenzie, if I'm a player. Dougie Howlett scored how many tries as an All Black outside back because he put himself in the right position to get the last pass. That's what great finishers do. What's the? I mean,
the risk is the clean out.
But can we run over the top of teams legitimately in a Rugby World Cup?
We shouldn't have to.
Well, exactly. use the one thing that we've always had as our skill and ability. I think we haven't had players with the confidence to do what some of the things that we are seeing from some of these guys this year.
No doubt we're flush with 10s at the moment when you look at Damian McKenzie, Richie Mo'unga, Beauden Barrett. Are we all happy with Beauden Barrett's form 3 weeks into the competition?
I think he'll be frustrated with his last 40 minutes in the last 2 weekends where he hasn't probably been able to drive the team as well as he'd like. The one thing he hasn't done, probably hasn't run as much as I'd prefer him to do, JK. The fact, it appears as though he's playing that distributor role just a little bit deep, and it's allowing the players, the defensive lines, to come up and put the the pressure on. So
yeah, he's probably saving himself for this week.
Well, I don't want anyone saving themselves for anything. Look.
No, look. I don't. Is he in his best form? No. But he does those little things so well. Those covers, though he hasn't attacked a bit. But I sort of think he'll be warming into it a wee bit. I don't know why he's not kicking. That's
well, no, he has been kicking. I just couldn't work out on the weekend. He took one, and then all of a sudden, now whether or not he's got a little niggle, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But then he gave the tee straight over to Stephen Petafeta, and who's striking the ball very, very nicely. So I was surprised at that because he'd been going well.
Maybe there's a niggle that we don't know about, or something, and we'll keep you posted on that if we do find out as well. But we've been talking about the battle at the back of the scrum, and one man, he stood out when you look at the number 8s. This is our Musashi power play this week. JK, it's Hoskins Sotutu. We'll let you go.
Yeah, and he's got the young gun against him that everyone's been talking about. And I think Hoskins is not dissimilar to Stevenson. What we want to see from Hoskins is consistency this year. We know what he can do with the ball in hand, and we need him to be getting turnovers, getting his tackle rate up, and I thought he was exceptional. This here, when you talk about clean-outs and stuff, Goldie, one of the things that does punish players when they get over the advantage line is that, something we possibly need to look at in the game, because you see a great line break and it's very hard for your supporters to get there. But this is an amazing turnover late in the game. I don't know why the Hurricanes went late to that scrum. That was weird in the best sort of way. But that was probably the best performance I've seen out of Hoskins for a wee while, Mills, and we need to see that consistency, right?
And that is our Musashi power play available at Chemist Warehouse. Let's talk about both Hoskins, Sotutu, Luke Jacobson, Peter Lakai, if he's an option. If Ardie Savea is not available, who are you picking at number 8?
Mills, you go first.
I'll
just pass that one. I'll just throw that straight to you. I'll get in.
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. I like the way Jacobson's gone about his business. I think what he does is you don't really see on the screen. He's hard. He goes at the ball. He brings that physical sort of balance to his game. Hoskins is starting to get that right. He's starting to actually sort of understand when do I need to be physical, when do I need to be sort of a little bit wider. And you're seeing these sort of stats from the last game. And that's probably why this is why Hoskins played so well. Look at what he's sort of getting. There's a real nice balance towards his game. Jacobson's really consistent. He's really consistent in terms of where his team needs him and what he needs to do.
So who are you starting at 8 if Ardie's not available? Who was it?
Pass.
Oh, well, what they're going to do.
You cannot pick one. This is my problem. If you pick Jacobson, and I'd have no issues with that, right?
You've got to pick
you've got to think. No, you've got to think what your balance is, because Jacobson, you pick Sotutu, then probably you got to, there's got to be the tight, loose. I've always believed in balance.
But it comes down to what you want your number 8 to do. And I look at the difference between, and I'm going to continue on this, the difference between the role Hoskins Sotutu can play at Super Rugby level, where there's certainly opportunities to go to his running game, and the changes at the scrum, once again, opens up his opportunity for the run, which we've seen. Jacobson, for me, is relentless. He plays like a 6-7 but at 8, but still has the subtlety to his game, runs beautiful lines, has the ability to offload. I think all of the combination of the loose forwards, and this is something you always talk about, and I think this is why it works as well for the Blues. Clearly, Dalton Papali'i is still playing really, really well. Sam Cane is playing really, really well, which is allowing these two number 8s. But I look at Jacobson and his impact on all parts of the game. I love what he's doing right now. So both upsides to both of them. But
he's probably the closest to Savea, right, in terms of how he plays. Luke is. And I think you're right. So in terms of the bigger picture then, in terms of the All Blacks, we're actually seeing, it's the balance that we're getting, but right across our super teams.
Who do you put at 6 then?
Shannon Frizzell, that was an easy one. Next question, carry on.
Oh, are you putting at 6, JK?
Well, if you I talk about combination.
Yeah.
I'll talk about it till the cows come home because that's important for me.
That's a Scott
You know,
Barrett's lock.
you could probably, let's say 2 loose forwards, and let's hope they don't get injured. You could probably play Jacobson there because he's going to work hard. He is consistent. You know, he is always going hard, but I always like an 8 ranging out wide that's got the speed and ability of Sotutu because that's the balance that I personally like, right? And late in the game, they can't do a lot of that consistent work because they won't have the energy.
I would have probably put someone, you know, maybe put Dalton there because, you know, as of late, you know, and Sam's had some big injuries. He hasn't really been as effective on the fetching side of things. But now you're starting to see that part of his game come back. So that would be the only thing I'd say. But Sam has got that part of his game, but he's almost coming, you know, back into the form that he had way before his neck injury, which is fantastic.
Good All Black chat.
No Mai, Hoki Mai, welcome back into the breakdown. Well, it's another week and we have more All Blacks news, don't we? Joe Schmidt has officially pulled his name out of the hat, out of the race for the All Blacks coaching role next year and beyond. He put out a statement saying he's loved being back on the grass coaching for both the Blues and the All Blacks, but with the condensed time frame this year, he will not be applying for any coaching roles that extend beyond the Rugby World Cup. Are we surprised by this, JK?
No, not at all.
Is it a big loss?
I think he'll coach the Blues.
Wow.
He said coaching roles.
Yeah,
He said
that
coaching
before.
roles.
He said that before.
I don't get that. He's just said he's not going to do any coaching roles.
Well,
so you're assuming that Leon McDonald is now, he's gone?
I'm assuming that he'll be part of the coaching staff either way.
Either way.
Either way.
Oh, yeah.
Either way.
Either way.
Either way. How does that work? Either way.
Well, I think there's a like.
What do you know that we don't know?
Well, there is a little
know?
bit of voce de corridoio for you this week. So I do know, and you can't actually quote me on this, right? So don't quote me because it's voce de corridoio. So it's true but not true. I do know that there's going to be up to 6 on the panel.
Yes.
So
Up to 6.
2 from governance, right? 2 from management, so internal management. So that's probably Mark Robinson. 1 coach and 1 ex-player. And is it Manonu? Well, I can't say. But what I can say is that the ex-player would be difficult to choose, Mills. I think we need a big Māori or Pacifica representation, and that can come in the coach or the management. But if it was a player, you'd also have to go back a wee bit. You probably couldn't get Rito or Richie because you might see them as favouring the Crusaders. And then if it was someone like Ma, is he enough detached to actually not have a bias? And so, but it's going to stay private. And when I first thought about that, I didn't quite agree, Goldie, but I actually do agree. These people have a big job to do. It's a massive selection. And so they'll keep it quiet till afterwards, Mills. So is it you? Are you the...
It's Mills.
Hey,
I'd vote
I
for
told you not to tell no one. I said to you in the green room, man. Come on, what you did, the corridori, whatever you call it. Come on.
True, not true?
Unavailable, I'm sorry, mate.
Unavailable.
It's
You're
not me.
unavailable?
It's not
The
me.
big question is, why do the All Blacks or New Zealand Rugby need this coaching panel? Why did the board not make this decision, Jeff?
Well, I look at this, and I've had a lot of time to think about this the last couple of weeks. And I look at this and
You
go...
didn't think about your golf.
Clearly, I didn't think about my golf. But I think in 2023, New Zealand Rugby now, I think looking to survive this season. What they're going to do is they're going to put financial and resource support around the All Blacks, right? The decision they're making right now is about 2024 and beyond, and it has to start now. And they need to start building that connection between the All Blacks and New Zealand Rugby going forward. Now, that is going to be different than it's ever been, because we've now got a different investment into the game who have different expectations. So I think that the interesting part about all this for me is, you know what I would like to have seen? I would like to have seen New Zealand Rugby, with its expertise or people inside its organisation, make the decision. Because I think they've been talking to these coaches probably for about 9 months. They spoke to Scott Robertson last year. They knew who his team was going to be. If they're doing their job, if they've done their research and looked in behind the scenes, look, we've just seen England straight away appoint their coach. Hasn't quite worked out the way they'd planned. Eddie Jones straight away. There's no interview process over there. If you've done your background, what are you going to find out, Sir John Kirwan, in a couple of hours in a boardroom with 6 people that you didn't already know about your coaches? People who have coached with you,
A lot.
coached against you. You think you're going to find
A lot.
out,
No,
you're
this
going
is
to
the
make a
problem.
decision.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I do.
Well, you will.
No, the problem is, like my dad would say, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I think they have to go public because they probably went to Razor and said, Razor, why don't you and Jamie go together? Then we don't have to interview anyone. And they both said, nah, actually, I'm going to go. And I think we have two amazing candidates.
Yeah.
So they can't just pick one, right? I think if Jamie said no, they just go boom. But I've got two amazing candidates, and I think they're going to sit back and go, actually, let's take a real good look at this, right? That's why I think the assistants are way easier, because if I'm Leon McDonald, I'm going, do I go? You cannot be loyal to one coach for the sake of the All Blacks if you're the best assistant. Does that make sense? Did that make any sense, Mills?
No.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that Leon McDonald and Jason Ryan should be available for both.
Okay.
Because we want the two best assistants. So what the NZR should be doing, I believe, is go, righto, we've identified these two as great. Can both of you work? Because if we start, like, those three would be pretty good. Tony Brown, Jason Ryan, Leon McDonald, with either of those two coaches. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So does it then? Why hasn't then, if the assistants are that settled and cemented in, shouldn't they be on the penalty about who they work well with? I mean, if considering what you're sort of saying.
Worker never picks the boss, bruh. Never.
Well, I think we've got to. I look at this and I look at the rugby expertise that we're talking about, right? The rugby expertise that you need to make this decision, right? And this is no fault of the New Zealand Rugby Board, because there's not a position for that on. But I look at a guy who had integrity and mana and was so well respected in Sir Brian Lahore, right? He was that guy that you looked up and represented New Zealand rugby. And so whenever there was some controversy, he was the guy that went out and said, look, we've got this under control. I'm going to give you a perspective from coaching, and he coached. I'm going to give perspective as a former player. Now, where is those people, and from the last 25 years that work for New Zealand rugby now, who are there, who understand the legacy of the All Blacks, understand coaching at the highest level? Who are the people who have actually been involved with the All Blacks in the group that work for New Zealand rugby now, who can actually help them make this decision?
I think it's a really interesting point, and I think it's a position that actually, if you remember back, were you both there? I think you might have been. So BJ Lahore got put into this situation because Laurie's team was a bit shaky, and he came in as a coach advisor, right? But he also had that mana.
Campaign manager. Campaign manager.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
And then he stayed. So he actually created this role, and he was amazing. They haven't recreated it, and maybe you've got a good point. Maybe there should be someone that we're going, actually, that person is going to have the mana, done the coaching, been a player, and he's going to be that person. Because I would say that someone like BJ Lahore, and unfortunately he's not with us anymore, would be that one of the coach and ex-player that would be easy decision, right? Right now, who would that coach be for you guys?
Wayne Smith.
He said no.
Why did he say no?
I think he's boogie boarding, and why he?
You know
Nice place
who
to
the
be,
other guy
AJK.
is? It's actually Joe Schmidt. I mean, you talk about a guy who's now understands the landscape of New Zealand rugby. Who has
impossible, mate.
Well, I know it's impossible, but what I'm saying is the fact that New Zealand rugby has never had that person. Steve Hansen left. You know, after he left, he was probably a guy that had that level of experience you're talking about. When you start asking the right questions to prepare these people, but they don't work for New Zealand rugby. And for me, it's an all-time. It's a every
a role
day.
to be created.
There's multiple things I think need to be dealt with. I don't think there's enough rugby expertise from the last 25 years that have been right in there, in the middle of it.
It is Wayne Smith, by the way.
So why does it matter then if there is a conflict in, whether they've been coached and stuff? No. There's no doubt right now we need someone, right?
Integrity.
We need someone. Unless
it's Wayne Smith.
Well, unless the union just go along with like what England and Australia does, just pick one. Just have the courage to just pick someone rather than getting a panel to then later on perhaps blame.
That went well for
actually
England.
Be held accountable.
Oh, exactly.
That's gone well for England.
Yeah, but hold on. You put a process in place, and this is my last point.
Sometimes CEO.
You put a process in place for something, all of a sudden they're the ones that you hold accountable.
The CEO of England Rugby did not go by process, and look what happened. They got beaten 52, whatever, irrelevant, because they got thumped.
Yeah, well, clearly he didn't do his homework.
Their coach. Well, but this is by actually doing it.
Wallabies, that's going to happen to the Wallabies?
Well, but different, mate. When you get Eddie Jones, who's actually been in a World Cup campaign, and he's been in so many. But that's why it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. That's why I actually think, do you want Mark Robinson as CEO going, actually, I'm going to pick that? Or do you want to have some people around them going, let's take a look at this? I agree. I think there's a role.
New Zealand Rugby. They should already be there.
Yeah, I agree there's a role, and I think that's something that the New Zealand Rugby should look at that role. And I think, like you said, it's someone like a Wayne Smith who actually can go in there and just be like Sir BJ.
Joe Smith, just lastly, Joe Schmidt said no coaching roles. He's not coaching.
Here we go.
Give him that role.
Who's going to coach the Blues?
I'm just going to let these two keep going. It's a great being a passenger on this one. Absolutely great debate, and it will rage long and hard. But some very positive news for New Zealand Rugby this week was that Scott Barrett has re-signed until 2025. He also played his 100th Super Rugby game in Fiji. We've got a look back at his innings so far.
Scott Barrett steaming down the field, could go all the way. Sensational try.
Play 100 for the Crusaders, it's hugely humbling, and thanks to the franchise and the boys along the way. It's quite humbling coming to Fiji. You see everyone out playing rugby, and every bit of green grass here, and it reminds you why we play the game. And this group is a special group of humans, great values, and just love turning up each day and working hard.
Terrific run from Bernat. Eventually hit hard. Now a little chance down the right side. Bernat. First time in field position in the Blues. A run after 12 and a half. Sabritsky Nafatali. Another attacking kick. Stevens. Daly on the end of it. Perfectly executed. What a finish by the post. Dumont. She's the talk of the world game and comes up with a big play for the Blues. They are all action when they get field position, the Hurricanes.
Jamie Duplessis with the offload for Renee Holmes. Skips out of the first tackle, opening out for Shay Robbins-Retty. Kohina will pick out the next two. They are playing under advantage. Little chip kick ahead. Steinmetz can't bring it in. And Menelani Paul swoops on the loose ball. Cuban. Big wide cutout ball this time for Fitzgerald. Back in field for Hohip around the corner. Vidal's to get a second.
Our semi-finalists have been found in Super Rugby Opiki. The Chiefs Manawa have gone through the competition unbeaten, but it doesn't matter because all four teams make it through to the semis, and it is all on from here. Mills, how do we make this Opiki competition the very best it can be?
I'd love to see it be restructured. I would have loved to see 2 rounds, and then go straight into a final. That gives everyone, a minimum of 6 games each, right? And then go into, 2 teams play 7. I think, 1 round and then we're going into semi-finals. The Blues have just won over the weekend. So they definitely need to think about resource and how that sort of looks instead of sort of go right through and you lose every game and you still make the semis. I just think...
Like my sort of competition.
Look, I think the greatest thing about the World Cup was it brought a new community crowd to rugby. I wouldn't be playing at Rugby Park. I wouldn't be playing at Eden Park. I'd be playing in other stadiums and I'd be playing all together, right, and get that public back. I don't know if Super Aupiki is the way forward for our female game. I know we're trying to get tougher competition and more players, contracted, and I agree with that. But should we be back to, the domestic game, like the NPC, and drive that community?
The question I have about this competition is the fact that it is so condensed and they had little or no time to prepare. And there was literally, I think, 2 weeks. They had 1 week before their pre-season games. I look at it and I'm going, how well prepared were they for this? I think all the teams have been slow to get going. The Chiefs Manawa came out of the gate, but they were clearly the best, the most talented side, and they've been very, very good. But I think if the one thing that set us apart last year was the speed and accuracy of the way that the Black Ferns play. Now, I get it, this is not the Black Ferns, but I look at this and go, you know what? My expectation would be coming into that the players are good and ready to go. I'd be interested to know where, in terms of their conditioning and preparation, the players were when they come into camp and how they've improved over the short period of time, and if they had another month, where they would get to and what we would see at the end. It just hasn't quite been long enough, but by the same token, you need to come in ready to fire from week one because the window's small.
Oh, absolutely. But the window can be a little bit bigger, you know, not one round. I mean, 3 games and then a semi-final. I mean, give some resource. I mean, yeah, they missed the boat. Well, you're right. You know, we should have rode that sort of wave, come in and say, well, how does this sort of look? You know, give them at least 6 games each to get themselves into, and a month before extra to roll in good condition. Not sort of, okay, let's just tick the box, see you later.
Well, this is the great meaty topics that they actually discuss on the Women's Game, the brand new show on Sky Sport dedicated to women's sport, not just women's rugby. It's hosted by Laura McGoldrick every Wednesday at 8 p.m. They've got special guests on each week. And this week, Michaela Blythe, the 2-time World Sevens Women's Player of the Year, is on. So do not miss that one. We're going to chat Six Nations now because round 4 was absolutely epic. Warren Gatland finally got the duck off his back. 3 rounds he went through without a win. But against Italy, JK?
No, I'm not happy. Gats. I think the Italians really needed to step up in this game. I think they've had a really, really good competition, but they just went missing early.
It's 2 bounces of the ball, though.
I know,
bounces
but
of the ball, you need. I mean, they still need some luck to go their way. They've made massive strides.
Italy have.
Italy,
yeah, totally.
Massively.
But they weren't as good as they should have been in this game. That was my problem. I think they've been outstanding for the whole tournament. I know Kieran, my gardener, will be gutted. I hope he doesn't take it out on my plants, but he'll be gutted because I think they're better than that, and I was expecting them to win. I'm happy for Gats. You know, I think that he's had a hard run back in. He's not dissimilar to England. He's got there, the team's in disarray, contracts are in disarray. It's been a hard time for him, but I was disappointed.
Well, the biggest game of this round had to be France with a record-breaking victory over England. It was actually embarrassing. You mentioned the scoreline, JK, over 50 points scored. First time since 2005 that France have actually gone to Twickenham and won. That was a statement that everyone was looking for in the World Cup year to say they're favourites, Jeff.
They were amazing.
Yeah.
You saw it, whether it was offloads with his kicking game, whether it was their passing game, execution, whatever it was, they did it beautifully. This is at the end of the game. This we talk about running into space. Look at this. This is just players in motion, quick hands, 3-on-2 on the outside. The ball, get rid of it. They run it into the end mills. To me, France showed exactly why they're the big contenders. And England, I've got some serious questions.
Wow. They
How
in trouble.
good's this?
You thought I was the problem, mate. Yes.
Look,
Can we laughing now?
the problem that I'd be most worried about is that I think Borthwick's come in and he's trying to do too much too soon. I mean, last week he drops Marcus Smith. This week he drops Farrell. I mean, Farrell is their leader. He's their captain. You put him on the bench. You know, like, I don't know what he's doing, but what he has done, and if you saw that defence there, and we all know outside in defence, they've got the best defence coach, who's English, coaching France. If they come in like that, you've got to make a tackle, Mills. I know it's a hard, courageous thing, but that wing gets caught in the middle of nowhere. That's just bad defence.
Another big game coming up tomorrow morning in the Six Nations as well. Ireland, Scotland. Please, from you two, just one word, Crusaders or Blues?
Crusaders.
Blues, Crusaders.
Don't even ask, Kirsty. Please don't even ask.
We'll be back next Sunday on The Breakdown. Thank you so much for joining us.